Pictures can sometimes say 10,000 words, a lot of words that we could just put with a picture. But when you think about a mother's love, you can see that in the picture. There's a tenderness of a mother's love. The eyes of the girl are closed, the mother's eyes are closed, but there's a sense of protection, there's a sense of togetherness, there's a sense of a tender moment that you can just shut your eyes and savor. Little boy's not that way. But he's holding on to the back of his mother, and she usually has his back because he's an adventurous little boy. He wants to go try to do different things today. His eyes aren't that closed, but he looks with vigor and he realizes, I can be adventurous. My mother will have my back. But he's close. Apparently the father is taking the picture, and what a serene setting that is. You have nature behind the trees. Apparently on the porch she has a chair that she can sit on. And that particular moment of a family with a husband and children, there's a sense of togetherness. There's a sense of belonging. And if you were an older woman up on the scene and you had taught that woman to love her husband, to love her children, to be concentrated upon the home, you might be very proud of that picture. Because that word love is phileo love. It means there's a sense of belonging. And at that moment, that lady has incorporated the children. The husband is involved with the picture. And there's a sense that we belong together. We're a family. And a lot of that time, that time in those relationships are cemented by a mother's love. We see that. And when we observe a mother's love, we begin to realize, what is it all about? What is the foundation of that love that we're talking about? When it's so serene and it's so important to have that togetherness. I want us to go to 1 Kings, the 3rd chapter. And in this chapter, we are going to be reading about the wisdom of Solomon. I think that's why it is put here, this incident. But you might not think, this is not where you go to talk about a mother's love. This is exactly where we're going. As it highlights the wisdom of Solomon, you ask the question, what wisdom does he show? He speaks about, he has the wisdom of God. And on this occasion, you don't have a serene setting necessarily. You don't have a mother that is tied to one man. You got two harlots, and they all live in one house. Two harlots in one house. On this particular occasion, they both had babies, days apart. But one baby had rolled over on the other baby, on her baby, and killed it. Middle of the night, she changes babies with the other woman, and she says, "Where's the live baby? It belongs to me." And the true mother says, "No, that's my baby. Let's go to King Solomon and let him solve it." And he does. The lady who really is the mother says, "This night happened, and there is indeed no strangers with us." That tells me there was a life spent with people involved in sexual relationships with a stranger. That's what's happening in that one house. She didn't have her own house, own little porch to go out upon. She's in a house of prostitution where most of the time strangers come and they go. That's the setting, and you're saying a mother's love? And you realize that that's exactly what we're saying. Because on this occasion, something is contrasted, and it's called natural affection. And it's indeed a contrast. Solomon is getting to the point of wanting to know who the mother is. And he says, "Fetch the sword." And he's going to have somebody else cut the baby. We're going to cut the baby in half. Then we read verse 26. Then spake the woman whose the living child was under the king, for her heart yearned for her son. And she said, O my Lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. But the other mother says, kill it. The mother said, you just kill it. If we both can't have it, then let the baby die. Who's the true mother? Who has the natural affection? You know it. I know it. God's wisdom, there's the natural affection. Even though I may not have the baby, there's affection, natural affection for that child. I want the child to live. And if it's not with me, sacrificial love. The other one was so selfish. If I can't have a baby, you can't either. Two harlots, one house, strangers coming and going, and we've got a setting to find out what natural affection is? Yes, we do. And you would think that just comes in nature. But does it? God is trying to get Job to realize he doesn't know everything. And he's given him all of the animal kingdoms that they are supposed to be familiar with. You know so much, Job. What about the ostrich in Job 39 and verse 13? The wings of the ostrich, they wave proudly. And we get to verse 18. What time she sitteth up herself on high, she scorneth the horse and his rider. She can stand up on high and be as high, eyeball to eyeball with a horse. And with pride, she can scorn the horse and the rider. She's that brave. She has wings and can spread them out proudly. But she's a perfect example of a bird brain. Not much sense, not much wisdom. In verse 13, are these the pinions and plumage of love? Now don't look at her face. Only a mother could love that face. But she's a mama. And does she have this great wingspan, brave, and face a horse with its rider? Does she have the plumage of love? Natural affection in nature. And God says, I didn't give her that wisdom. She will lay her eggs in the dust, and it will allow other predators to come in and trample over them. And she is so dumb that she will trample on them as well, forgetting that's where they are. Or at times of danger, she's just running around and she will stomp them to death. She's not too smart. Ostriches have been known to eat bullets. They're not too smart. And he said, Job, you know about this one? Verse 16, she dealeth hardly with her young ones, as if they were not hers. Natural affection. She lacks it. Though her labor be in vain, she is without fear. But she's not the best mother that you could look at that says, all right, we're going to look at a mother's love. She can be a mother. And she can lack natural affection. Does she really have the plumage of love? No. No egg's going to feel safe in the dust that ostrich lays. And God says that. I didn't give her that wisdom. I didn't give her wisdom. I've deprived her of wisdom, verse 17. I said, Job, do you know about that one? Do you know about that one? You know everything, don't you, Job? Why? What's happening with your life? And he used that example, but that's an example of nature not having natural affection. We take that to the humans and realize in the old times, ancient times, there are two times in our Bibles where natural affection is being talked about. And number one, it's in grievous times, when natural affection is not being manifested. In 2 Timothy 3, in verse 1, know this, in the last days grievous times shall come. And there's a love problem in these grievous times. There'll be lovers of self. They will be lovers of money. They'll be lovers of pleasure. And they will not be lovers of God, and they will be without natural affection. Misplaced love is the problem. And because they don't have a love of God, they don't have the natural affection they have. Because why? They're selfish. I want my pleasure and need a little money for that, sir. Lovers of pleasure, lovers of money, lovers of self. And God, you're out of the picture. That's the ancient world. That's the world in the times when the New Testament was written. That's the times when older women to teach the younger women to love. They love their husbands, love their children. They were to submit to their husbands so the word would not be blasphemed. Here was godliness being set forth in a world of darkness, and people didn't like it. It's grievous. It's difficult because of selfishness. Now don't jump to this time we live in today too quickly. I know you want to, and we'll be there. Anytime you start departing from God, look out. You're ahead for grievous times. And the love that's called natural affection will be absent from that society. The ancient world is being talked about in Romans, the first chapter, in verses 28 through 31, where the Apostle Paul says they refuse to have God in their knowledge, talking about the pagan Gentile world. And when they refuse to have God in their knowledge, problems occur. And in verse 31 we read, without understanding, break their promises, covenant. They have covenant breakers, without natural affection, unmerciful. Without natural affection and unmerciful. And where does it start? It starts refusing God. God's out of the picture. That happens with the writing of 2 Timothy. Happens with Paul when he writes the Romans. That's the theme. God is out of the picture, and therefore we don't have natural affection. But what about our modern world? Since 1973, Roe versus Wade, when that came in the courts, beginning in 1975 up to 2012, the United States is killing 1 million babies a year in abortion. Planned Parenthood researchers, along with Right to Life people, have come up with that. Well, there are 63 million that have been aborted since Roe versus Wade came law of our country. Carrying, a fetus. Look at our modern world, they call it a baby now. Aborting babies, that doesn't bother some people today. What's lacking there? It's kind of like the ostrich. I don't really care for my babies. And we live in a time where, could selfishness be involved in that? I care about myself. I had my pleasure. I don't like the consequences. Let's get rid of the baby. And that's why it's been pushed to the point of third trimester. How you know that's a baby. You heard its heartbeat very early on, and we still kill it. And you don't want to hear all the different ways it can happen. But it happens, and it's been happening. All of a sudden, what's happening now? It may be turned over. And not that it will be ended, it just go back to the States, and people are having a fit over that, aren't they? Long ago we learned that this is just another way for contraception when all the other contraception didn't work. We'll just kill it and won't worry about it. A mother looking at the child that way, there's no natural affection when you're a lover of self, lover of pleasure, and you left God out of the picture. That's our society. And that is our modern world. So, does the ancient world have a solution for our modern world? Yes, it's the Bible. And I'll suggest to you that it's not going to misplace love. It's going to put love in the way it should be. That will be very helpful. We're going to bring God back in the picture. In fact, you're going to devote your entire heart unto God. Not to an issue, but to a person. I will love God with all of my heart, soul, mind, and strength. Every part of my being. Because there's only one God. I can devote my total self to Him. He's not a man. He's not a creature in the sense of animals. He's God. And you'll never be disappointed in that. That's the first and great commandment, Jesus says. And the one is likened unto it, to love your neighbor as yourself. You won't be too selfish when you have that kind of love. You won't be too selfish. You'll be thinking about others. And yet there are 10 commandments on the tablets. 600 and some odd laws that are given in the Old Testament. But what the law and the prophets, all the teaching of the prophets, what the laws were given Moses onward, and all of the laws that we're studying on Sunday morning, you put them all together and they hang on the two great commandments. You love God with all of your being and you love your neighbor as yourself, and you will fulfill the law. That's the great commandment. Love God with all of your being. That's our solution to the lack of natural affection for our children that mommies have when they're godly and they're thinking according to the Scriptures. This was the problem in Romans 1. We come back to Romans 1. Where does it all begin? Because that knowing God, they glorified Him not as God. That's the problem. We know He exists. Everybody, we can talk about and have that debate. But deep down in our souls, we know He exists. And we think about just the beauties of conception and a baby growing in the womb and all the changes that are taking place. That here's a viable child soon while in the womb, and life is going on in there, and it's fearfully and wonderfully we are made, the psalmist says. That's not speaking out of our experience. We know that. And we know that here's God, but we don't glorify Him as God. And that's where it starts. That's the initial problem. And look what it leads to. We're not thankful. We deserve it. Well, can't give thanks to that. It's no big deal to me. I'll do what I want to do. And their senseless heart is darkened. They've become vain in their reasonings. It's just a fetus. It's not a baby. This is inconvenient. You don't want me to have to deal with that. I'm not prepared to be a mother. I don't know how I'm going to support the baby. Well, all those things, therefore we'll kill it. We'll kill it. We'll kill the baby. You become vain in your reasons and your senseless heart. You don't have natural affection any longer. Your senseless heart is darkened. And we say, how dark can it be to kill your baby? No, we don't want to think about it. We just want the right to do it. And that's our issue right now in our country right now. What's going to happen? But they profess themselves to be wise. They really become fools. Verse 24, wherefore God gives them up to the lust of their hearts. Why didn't He stop this stuff? He's God. He gives us in. He lets us have our way. And we see, oh, that's grievous times. Some consciences are hardened and they don't feel it anymore. Others say, will it ever stop? It'll stop when we come back glorifying God, because it ends up that you will do things that are against nature, like homosexuality and lesbianism. That's what it happens here. Verse 26, for this cause God gave them up unto the vile passions, for the women changed the natural use unto that which is against nature. Men with men, working unseemless, receiving themselves the recompense of their error, which was due. Here's the evil lust. Men against with men, women with women, changing the natural order of things. That's what's happening. And we're living in a time where God's not glorified, our hearts are turned away from God, and our senseless heart, our reasons become vain. We can have emoji of a pregnant man in our society today, and you'll be real cool. How ignorant can you be? That will never happen. It doesn't make any difference. We want it whatever we want it to be. And I will serve myself and I will not glorify God. That becomes the problem. That's the initial problem. When we start realizing we're here to glorify God, it will change how we treat one another, how we treat our babies, how moms will manifest natural affection because the love that they have in their heart. Here's a picture frame. And let's just talk for a moment about, there'll just be women in this picture frame. And we'll speak about women here that Proverbs 31 kind of talks about. And I want to begin that Proverbs 31 speaks of women in a special relationship, but I want to begin looking at Proverbs 31 as it sums up in the latter part of that chapter. Who is the woman that is worthy of praise? Does she have to be married? No. Grace is deceitful. Beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth Jehovah, she shall be praised. You don't have to be married to have natural affection. You can have natural affection and not be married. And you can be married and not able to have children. You're still worthy of praise. We want to make that clear. Your picture could be in here as the worthy woman this morning. And you're single, or maybe you're married and you don't have children. Regardless, you can be worthy of praise because you fear Jehovah in your heart. And that is more beautiful than the outside of you. And you can be very beautiful on the outside too. And when I look at that, Proverbs 31 is talking about a wife who has children. She's included too. I just want to include the others. I just ask you, when you put your picture there, single, married, no children, married, children, put your picture there. Smile. I imagine it'll be a great picture. I want to ask you, what is your dual love? Now, I could have put D-U-E-L, and we call, well, that's how love is. It's fighting around here. We're having duels all the time. No, dual love. What is your twofold focus of your love? Well, if you're married and you have children, you say, hey, it's easy. I love my husband and I love my children. That's my dual love. Or we have members in this congregation and you're seeing it. It's a wonderful moment that you have mothers who have daughters who are having babies, and you're a grandmother. And you want to see the tenderness of a grandmother? It just enlivens them. They say, hey, I hadn't forgotten how to do this. I hadn't forgotten how to show tenderness. What a moment it is to be able to share a baby with the grandmother. My dual love, I love my daughters, I love my grandbabies. That's my love. What about the husband? I still love him too, but he's third. He just wanted two. He kind of, I got the baby now. And there's the dual love that way. But that's not the dual love I'm talking about. Let's answer that by looking at this woman that's worthy of praise. Where does she direct her daily energy? If you're with me in Proverbs 31, I'll tell you one thing, verse 15, she riseth also while it is yet night, probably coming on the dawn of the day. She gets up early, and she's doing what? She's giving food for her household and the task to her maidens. She's carrying her energy, lack of sleep maybe, for her household. Verse 20. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor. She reacheth forth her hands to the needy. Where do the poor come in? Your babies are poor. Your husband is well known in the city and the gates. You're dressed in scarlet, in purple, maybe on this idea of royalty. What's this idea of poor? Because she has dual love. She has dual love. Her love, her heart is open in love to take care of others. That's not necessarily her family. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. Her energy is directed not only for her household, maidens, but the fathers, the husbands. Verse 28, her household is going to be with the kids as well. To the point that in verse 28, her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praiseth her, saying, many daughters have done worthy, but thou excellest them all. What dual love does she have? Just a husband and children, where the poor come in. Why are you helping the needy? Take care of family. No. Husband, children, others. When you love God with all of your being, you'll love your neighbor as yourself. Because that's how God wants us to love. And all of a sudden your heart is opened to helping so many people that you come in contact with. There is that picture. That is the woman that needs to be praised. As we see in verse 30, if she fears Jehovah, she shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands. All that energy she's spending, directing that to the various people, let her works praise her in the gates. You see her love in action. Yes, it's the husband. Yeah, it's the children. It is a sense we belong together. But in her mouth is kindness, it is wisdom, because she's devoted herself to serve God. That's the picture. And you could be a worthy woman whether you're single, married, childless. Are you married with a husband and with children and with grandchildren? You can be a worthy woman. Because why? I love God with all of my heart. I love my neighbor as myself. I want to look after them because I want them to look after me. That is the solution. That's the love, because what we have without natural affection is that I only love myself. I want my convenience. I don't want to know anything about God. God has our solution. Will our society look at that way? I hope so. Mothers are to be praised. Women are to be praised that are godly. And there's something special about the tenderness, the sense of belonging in a family with children. And I hope that all here, especially our women here, will put God first. So indeed you will be in that picture of the worthy woman. This morning, if you're not a child of God, we want to encourage you to become a Christian. You know, marriage is kind of looking at the picture of the church. In fact, when Paul wrote about the church, he used marriage as an illustration, but he really was talking about the church, the Christ relationship with her bride. And there's that relationship of the wife and the husband. Yet we'll be judged as individuals, not as family. And if we go to the judgment seat, it won't be based upon we had a worthy woman for a wife, had good kids, but I didn't have Christ. Christ wants you to belong to Him. And we see He paid the price. He died for us. He was raised to show His power over death so we can have the power over death. And to turn our hearts where we say, God, I'm not going to refuse you. I'm going to put you at the center of my life. You'll never regret that. Your family will never regret that. So if you're at that point, you know what to do. You know that Jesus died for you. You know you need to repent of your sins. You need to be willing to confess Him, and you're at that point. I am ready to confess Him to be the Son of God. He's going to be the Lord of my life, and not ashamed of it. And we can baptize you into Christ based upon your confession and repentance. And you can be raised to walk this newness of life. Whether you're male or female, man or woman, husband or wife, single, married. As an individual, you can start your life and your walk with God. You'll never regret that, because when God's at the center, His love is at the center, and we can help avoid grievous times when that happens. So if you're subject to the gospel invitation, let us help you be right with God as we stand and sing. Please come.